is time for Around the 412 with Smitty and Tyler.
Welcome back to another episode of Around the 412. I am Tyler. With me, as always, is my co-host, Smitty. Be sure to go follow us on all of our social medias at Around the 412. And go check out the link that we have in the description of the show. We've got everything custom designs. Haley Wagner, small business. She's our friend. Go check her out. She does some customized clothing. She does a lot of holiday stuff, some Pittsburgh stuff. She does some Around the 412 stuff as well. So if you want to go check out, rep the brand, you can go hit her up and get some stuff for yourself. Also, check out our sponsor, Keeks Barbershop, above my head on YouTube. We don't have a link for him, but you can download the Cut app and look up Keeks Barbershop. Smitty knows the address, so he'll say it real quick because I do not.
401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA.
I like the voice. Maybe you should.
What if I just talk like that all the time?
I'll say maybe you should have that voice the next time you're on 93.7 The Fan with Donnie Football.
With Donnie. Yeah, Donnie, I'd have to get in the character and then like somehow be able to maintain that.
That's mid-Kuiper. A little bit of mid-Kuiper just came out.
Yeah, it did.
All right, this is the Penguins show.
Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. This is the Around the 412 Penguin show, sponsored by
mid-Kuiper's not going to show up. Yeah,
mid-Kuiper, no. Oh, but I know this isn't the Steelers show. I'll be sure to mention on the Steelers show that we're about to record after this as well. But NFL draft, night 1 and night 2. I will definitely be here. Tyler, we'll see how that goes with him being in Europe during the NFL draft. But I will definitely be here. Drew,
I don't think people knew that until just now. I'll be in Europe. So Tyler, we'll figure it out. There's going to be like a 5 or 6 hour time difference. I think 5 hours maybe. I will currently be in Paris night 1 and 2 of the draft. So during the Steelers picks, we'll see if I like wake up and join on. I'm not going to be on there the whole time though.
Sure. Absolutely. We wouldn't expect that to be the case. We will play it by ear in terms of your availability, but I will definitely be here doing something. We will see who all is with me, but Sarge, Drew, Joe, Jake Shavank from last year, probably in that mix as well. We'll see what else happens. So very excited for it. Be sure to join. We're going to be giving stuff away. I got a prize wheel this year to be able to do the prizes and stuff. I don't know if you guys saw my tweet, but I literally have a giant prize wheel that I'm going to have the prizes on because we got a Terry Bradshaw Funko Pop. Of course, every year we do the jersey of the first round pick. We're going to do another Steelers jersey this year of choice, probably give away a set of Steelers tickets like we did last year. So it's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of prizes. Myself, our friends, Tyler, maybe at some point, Mid-Kuiper Jr., going to be a blast. So be sure to tune in for that. What hasn't been a blast is this Pittsburgh Penguins season really as a whole. And things just continue to get worse. They haven't scored a goal, or I'm sorry, they've scored 2 goals in their last 288 shots.
Yeah. Thanks to Dmitry Filipovich for that, by the way. But
yeah, well, I actually heard.
I don't know if that's where you saw it. Okay, I saw Dmitry Filipovich tweet about it.
Yeah. Awesome.
2 goals in the last 288 shots. What's that shooting percentage? Let me break out the calculator. That's got to be absolutely absurd.
1 out of 144 shots, so that would be
0.6. Basically, 0.694%.
Awesome.
Shooting percentage. That is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, this team we're watching them bottom out in real time, and I guess you kind of could have figured that this would happen post trade deadline, but they didn't sell off as many pieces as we thought they would at the deadline either. Like, if this was a lineup that also didn't have like a Riley Smith or a Lars Eller in it, and it was literally just like the core guys that you kept, and then obviously the scrubs, and then a bunch of young AHL guys that were getting some opportunity, like I could see this being the case. But here's the thing about it. Like, you could argue that they're on paper should be better than they were right before the deadline because they didn't have the services of Jake Gensel, and even Bryan Rust just recently came back. But then you add Michael Bunting into the mix, and we'll talk about him in a second. But like the scoring drought that this team is on, we knew that they weren't a good hockey team, but we are literally watching them somehow get worse.
How much of it do you think is the players accepting in their mind that they know that they're not playing for anything? You always want to think that
Yeah.
the players are not going to
okay,
lose their competitive edge, but this is the
here's
first time that this core has ever experienced this.
Yeah, and that's more of a case to me to bring up guys from, because those guys would be playing for something. They're playing to try to make lives for themselves in the NHL. Like, how many of these guys are feeling like they're on the chopping block? Probably not.
Not up here already. Like, how is a guy like that not at the NHL level right now?
I'm not sure. I mean, you got, like, I've liked some of what Emil Benstrom has brought to the table, but like, what are we doing? I feel like he's kind of like the new Jansen Harkins at this point. Who else is down there? Like, I mean, I know Noel Achari's contract probably gonna keep him in the line. Jeff Carter, who we know is gone after the season. Like, what is having him out there really doing for the rest of 2024? Like, there's what's the upside in having him out there? I'm not sure, but I don't know. I just it's so frustrating to watch. And here's the thing: we said before the season that it was possible, right? That this wasn't necessarily a very good hockey team. They didn't make the playoffs last year. They didn't necessarily improve in a ton of ways. They got different, is what they did. They brought some furniture in the bottom six and got Erik Karlsson. But not only are they bad, they're boring. Like, there is literally no reason to turn on a Penguin game these days because they're scoring 0 or 1 goals basically every single night. There is zero entertainment value. And at the end of the day, that's what sports are for, is to provide entertainment. I mean, obviously everybody wants their team to win. And if your team is boring but wins, you accept it. But if they're boring and bad, what in the world is the point of watching them?
And that's the problem. I think we're going to have to suffer through it the rest of the season because I just don't see anything changing, especially fundamentally changing. Mike Sullivan's not going to change anything about this team. That's the difference. Is like, I think this team would be very comparable to say that they are like the LA Kings post their cup runs, where they're a boring team to watch. They're only scoring a couple goals a game, maybe. But the difference is the LA Kings also played a similar style where even when they were good, they weren't lighting up the goals a ton. Like, they were playing a very shut down style of hockey. And so that was more so just what you expected. And it was natural for them that to happen even as they aged. The Penguins, they're not used to playing that style of hockey. They don't play that style of hockey. The fundamentally, the scheme that they have from their head coach, they're not playing that style of hockey. Or at least they're not trying to, but they are doing it anyway because they've regressed so much from what they were. And I think that there is a little bit sprinkled in of certain players accepting that this is our first losing, not their first losing season in their career, but like their first, like, we're packing it in and our GM's not trying to win this season. And so we have nothing left to play for this season. And I understand that, like, you want to always have that competitive edge as a player. You want your players to always be like 100% devoted into what they're doing. But I would never question a guy like Sidney Crosby or anything like that on how competitive he is. But people cannot watch the Penguins right now and tell me that Crosby is not playing down right now. People cannot watch the Penguins and tell me that, like, Malkin and Letang are not playing down right now. I'll just refer to Josh Yohe real quick, who tweeted out last night after the game that the Penguins have scored 11 goals in their past 8 games. And in those games, Sidney Crosby is 0-2-2. So he has 2 assists for 2 points. He's a -12 in those 8 games. Evgeny Malkin has 2 goals and 2 assists. He's a -5. Erik Karlsson has 1 assist. He's a -4. Chris Letang has 1 goal. He's a -10. Now, we don't normally go for plus minus as a stat that really plays a lot, but that's more so as a season level. Over a game, like an 8-game stretch, I feel like plus minus is a much more indicative of what's going on, especially for specific players on the ice. And when your stars have the most is Malkin at 4, but then 2 for Sid and 1 each for Karlsson and Letang points in those stretch of 8 games, is that a little bit of they're in a drought and they're not playing well? Yes. But is it also they kind of have succumbed and realized what's going on, and so they're not they're playing, and maybe they're not playing like with 100% of their ability? I I think so. And I don't want to say that because I would never think that of those guys, but this is, like I said, and I keep reiterating it is the first time they've ever been put into this position. And I feel like us seeing this as the reaction to it shouldn't be that surprising because it's the first time that their team has ever said to them, we don't believe in what you're doing on the ice, and so we're not going to try to win this season.
But it's also the guys you mentioned. It has nothing to do with that. Like, and going 8 games back, that was before they traded Jake. Because I was going to say, like,
yeah,
man, listening to Sid after that game where they traded Gensel, it obviously wasn't like official yet, but everybody knew that it was happening.
Yeah, and then they got shelled by the Caps 6-0 that night.
Yeah. Listening to Sid talk about that, I've never heard him sound so deflated about a situation. That very clearly, rocked him, and you just wonder how much that did to the entire locker room. We heard about how the locker room was negatively impacted when they traded Carl Hagelin. I got to imagine trading Jake Gensel was like 10.
I mean, that's like Carl Hagelin on steroids. Like that
Right.
is infinitely bigger.
Yeah, and you got to be able to overcome that, obviously. And I'm not trying to make excuses for their performance, but like to your point, I think that there's a lot of factors playing into this, and it's not just like these guys are washed. Like we saw them playing at a very high level up until the point where we very clearly could see that they're not contending for anything. So I don't know. I mean,
Sid was on pace for like 96 points. Now he's currently on pace for like 83, 84. Like he's definitely had a dip in his play. Player. Yeah. Yeah. He better pick it up. But I mean, another thing that doesn't help is not only have they had low morale, I feel like over the past several games, but outside of the Senators, they've been playing really good teams too. They after they traded, I mean, the night they trade Washington, which Washington isn't that great, but in that rivalry game, I mean, anything can happen, but they just completely packed it in, and Washington just drilled them 6-0. Yeah. And then if you were to give me $100 on the weekend and let me go down to the casino on the river and go down and say, are the Penguins going to win these next 2 games? I would have put $100 on no for both of them because there's absolutely no way in my mind I saw them beating Boston or the Oilers, especially seeing what the Oilers did to them just like a week ago.
Most lopsided head-to-head matchup we've seen, I think, over the last few seasons is them versus Edmonton.
It is awful. It's terrible. Yeah. They have been completely manhandled by Edmonton over the past couple of seasons. It's been crazy. But to have a weekend of back-to-back games where you're playing Boston and you're playing Edmonton, it did not sell you any favors. And then last night, last night as we're recording this, so it's probably 2 days ago as of this is coming out, with Ottawa, the Ottawa game, I don't think they looked like terrible all during like the entire game, but man, there were certain moments in that game where it's like, of course, the way that game ended in overtime with Letang falling down, Bunting not getting a shot off on a breakaway. I think that, and I don't know who brought this up. I think it actually might have been Jesse Marshall said that if anything, people keep talking about how this is bad for Sid and like saying that the team is not like doing enough to help Sid out. What about Tristan Jarry and the season that he's having? The team is not doing enough to help out Tristan Jarry for what he's been able to do in net this season. And I feel like that's probably not getting talked about enough. And that's a good point by Jesse. That's a good point by Jesse to bring that up. It's something that we knew had to happen this year to have the team be successful, is have Jarry have the season that he's had. But the downside is the team didn't get any better in front of them. And they just got different. Like we were saying, like we said back in October and September, whenever we were talking about the construction of this team, they just got different. And clearly they didn't get any better.
I feel like the goaltending has dipped a little bit though too. Not last night against Ottawa, but
Yeah.
like generally speaking, but like from where they were at, obviously they were providing incredible value to this team. But no, Jesse either watches or listens to most of our episodes. That's why we were saying that and messing around about it. Love Jesse. Come back on the show, by the way. But he did tweet at me today and say he tagged me. Did you see last night? I don't know what in the world happened, but everybody was tagging.
You're the
me,
inside
like,
source for all these. There are all these
fake
future
Steelers
signings for the Steelers.
Yeah. But Jesse wanted to get
I'm excited
in on the
to see
action
Plexico
today.
back.
That is the one I am excited, probably most excited about. Jesse tweeted me today and said, Bubby Brister plans to announce his return to football, challenging Russell Wilson and Kenny Pickett to a Hell in a Cell match at PPG Paints Arena, where Triple H would guest referee. Fine with all this. And winner becomes quarterback even. I'm fine with that part. And mayor of Monaco. Okay, now you're bringing the hometown into this. So, watch what gets said here. Watch what gets said here. Then this Tim guy respond and says, I got Russ winning this one by let's ride submission on KP after Triple H pedigrees Brister. Ultimate heel move. In his first act as mayor, Russ will close Yolanda's. Why? I have to take a stand. I have to interfere in this match if this is what it's coming down to. We can't have these types of stakes on the line in this matchup. So, but anyways, the only reason I was bringing that up was because Jesse put that out there, and then it caused like this trickle effect because of Jesse's following getting involved. I do appreciate the shout out to Monaco though. So, but yeah, we got to have Jesse come back on in the near future, and maybe
shout out to Ambridge, where Jesse's from, trashiest place on earth.
Because very, very likely that the Penguins are picking higher than we've seen them pick. Really, like, since we really knew what was going on with hockey,
what's the highest pick we've seen them? Was it the pick we got for
they've picked 1 and 2 in our lifetime, obviously, but like,
I'm not even counting that. Like, basically, Sid era is the highest pick. The pick we got for Jordan Stahl. Didn't we pick like number 8 that year?
8, yeah.
And that was,
I would have to think so. Yeah.
Was that Daniel Sprong?
No, it was Pouliot.
No. Oh, that was Pouliot. The Derek Pouliot. I was trying to think of another washed up.
That draft was in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I was trying to think of another washed up, never was, has been player that the Penguins have drafted.
Derek Pouliot at 8 and Ali Mata at 22 in that first round.
Yeah.
So
that's the highest we've seen them in the Sid era draft.
Right.
And we're hoping that we can eclipse that. Because as of right now, they've got a 3.5% to make the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Or no, 3.6% to make the playoffs, 3.5% to win the draft lottery. So,
oh, wow.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And we need them to finish. And I know I bring this up during the Steelers and more or less hyperbole about it with the Steelers sometimes. It was like in week 3 or 4 when I typically bring it up for them. But at this point in the season and how little you have left, are you wanting the Penguins to really have some success down the stretch? Because if they get out of the top 10, they don't have that first round pick. You need them to finish within the top 10. Otherwise, they're not picking at all.
Where I wanted to wrap up this show was asking you what they need. Like, how do you salvage the season at all? And maybe that's part of your answer is guaranteeing
my
that
answer
you're picking the
for
top
salvaging
10.
the season is you're not winning more games. You're guaranteeing that you're at least picking in the top 10. Because if you're not picking in the top 10 and you're missing the playoffs, then what is the point? What is the point to be in the middle of the road for mediocrity at that point?
I agree. I'm typically when we have this conversation about the Steelers, where I stand. Like, I'm always
100%
as many games as possible. But I will
say,
I think
with the Steelers, I bring it up in like week 3, so it's completely different.
I will say the difference here for me is like you're talking about. In that case, it's more about like wanting to maintain the culture and like having to win to maintain that. With the Penguins, like I just don't think that like that's in an 82 game season where they are as a franchise, it's as big of a deal as it is for the Steelers.
What culture do they even have right now?
I don't know. But like, so for me, my answer for salvaging the season, I agree. I don't want to see them win enough games where they're outside of the top 10. But for the love of God, let's get some of these guys up from the AHL and see what we got. Like, let them play, because most of the guys that are playing right now in this bottom 6 we don't want them on rosters in 2024, 2025, let alone beyond that. Let's see if there is anything there, with what would it be, like his third stint in the NHL for Sam Poulin at this point? Granted, the first two weren't extended periods of time or anything like that, but I think there's enough intrigue, at least from me. Don't know where you or anybody else stand, to see what some of those guys down there have, as opposed to what's up here right now.
Well, I do, and that's why I asked early in the show, like, why is Sam Poulin not up here yet? Especially if we're packing it in on the season, what do you have to lose? I'd rather see what you can do at an NHL level with a prospect that's been in the minors for 5 years. He was in juniors and then in the AHL. He hasn't had a long-term stay at the NHL level. I would rather see him play than a lot of the other guys that are currently on the roster. And
sure.
I feel like this doesn't get brought up enough. And I asked you just now, like, what's the culture of the Penguins? Like, I feel like the culture of the Penguins right now is probably the worst it has ever been. It's pretty much since I would say that the Gen X, the Generation X, or the X generation, whatever they called it in the early 2000s with like Marty Straka and all that. Like, I feel like that's probably the worst it's been since then. But the difference is those guys, you could tell they were trying on the ice. They just weren't good enough and they were getting beaten by better teams. But with this team, it's just like a snooze fest, and it is a bore fest. Right. So I think as of right now, the culture is even worse than that. The scheme for the team is even worse than that. And we just compared to the Steelers, we talk about all the time, and people want to bring up all the time, well, the Steelers haven't won a playoff game since this time. They haven't won a playoff game since January of 2017. Well, the Penguins haven't won.
Invested.
The Penguins haven't won the Penguins haven't won a playoff game or a playoff series since 2018. Yeah. Only a year less than what the Steelers drought has been, and they haven't made the playoffs the past season, and it's going to be this upcoming season. There's no way they're getting back into playoff contention. So you need to make a lot of changes if you're Kyle Dubas this offseason when it comes to personnel on the team, when it comes to the coaching staff, and you better get a top 10 pick. And obviously with the help of luck on our side, who knows? Maybe we could pick number 1 overall and win the lottery. I think that would be nuts, but you need to finish in the top 10 to even pick. You might as well just pack it in and get there.
Yeah, I agree. There was a lot of frustration put into this episode, clearly, with where the team is at and everything like that. Full transparency, didn't have a script, 0 in the notes regarding the Penguins. And I feel like we just had one of our better episodes just talking off the cuff about the state of the Pittsburgh Penguins. So let us know your thoughts. I am very interested to see where everybody is at with the Penguins. I know there's a lot of people that share a lot of the sentiments that were shared on here, regarding this team. Certainly the coaching staff. I've seen a lot of takes. People change their opinion of things within the last couple of weeks, and I'm curious where people stand with that. I don't necessarily expect a change, and I will end with this and get your thoughts on this as well because of where I'm at. I wouldn't be upset with them moving on from Mike Sullivan. I just don't necessarily see it happening before next season, but I fully expect them to completely gut the coaching staff under him going into next season.
I think that the very least, the last part, what you said is correct. I think the team's going to be gutted, but the thing I question is if Mike Sullivan is staying true to his system, even despite all the adversity. What word am I trying to say? Adversity. There it is. Jeez,
I was like, maybe I don't know if he's looking for this word.
I just had a freaking stroke. Holy cow! Despite all the adversity they've shown, the fact that he hasn't tried to adjust anything gives me concern. The only way that's not as concerning to me is if Dubas literally said, "Don't do anything." But even then, I feel like that is concerning to me. That Dubas would even say that. I'm open to moving on from Mike Sullivan at this point. Back-to-back losing seasons in a franchise where that just hasn't happened in recent history. That hasn't happened in a couple decades. And I understand that you're allowed to have losing seasons. And so people that get upset at people for being upset about the Penguins having losing seasons, I understand that you're allowed to have losing seasons, but that doesn't mean that you stay the same way as a franchise. That doesn't mean you have to keep everybody with them. Grateful for everything Mike Sullivan's done, but I'm open for moving on and seeing what the future could hold, because I just don't think there's much more to offer from Mike Sullivan for what they could do with this franchise.
And I agree. Most of this, unless I think what a lot of people need to realize, and I try to differentiate when I'm saying like what my opinion is personally, as opposed to what I think they'll do. That's why I preface there with, I don't think it's on the table for the organization right now to move on. I think they'll certainly go into next season with him as the head coach and go from there. But I mean, we'll see. I think all things should be on the table. When you miss the playoffs 2 years in a row, like you said, I haven't won a playoff series. I think it has to be on the table to move on. Whether or not they do, I don't see it happening until we get into the season next year. If they do have another stretch of hockey, like with what we've seen this year, they got to be, in my opinion, much quicker on the trigger though next year if they do go in with him.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be pretty similar to the way he was brought in, right? It's got to be pretty similar to Mike Johnston.
Yeah, I don't even know if I would give him until December, but yeah, I agree. Because that was like December 14th or 15th or something. Like, I don't know if you can wait that long, to be honest, if you don't see an improve. And you're going to see roster changes too. Like, we don't know what the next year's Penguin team is going to look like, but just. Yeah,
I mean, you're going to see guys. There's several guys that are going to be, they're going to try to move on from this summer. I fully expect that. The team doesn't have a ton of cap space, and so they're going to need to open stuff up to really change things.
Absolutely. We still have to record the Steelers episode this week. I'm very excited to talk about the Steelers. So we're going to get out of here. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell here. Hit us in the comments with your thoughts on what's going on with the Penguins, where you're at with the coaching staff, where you're at with the roster, what they need to do going into the offseason, if this year is salvageable at all, not from a record standpoint, just from what you need to see heading into the offseason. Everything Custom Designs. Be sure to check Haley Wagner out, our friend, small business. Custom t-shirts, hoodies, a lot of different clothing, just not hats, but pretty much anything else you want, she can do customized holiday stuff, around the 412 designs as well. Actually, I mentioned the draft stuff earlier. A couple around the 412 shirts from Haley are going to be part of that as well. And then above Tyler, if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're not, Keats Barbershop logo. They've been our sponsor since day one. Christian, Tony, the guys over there. 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA is where you can find Keats Barbershop. If you are ever in the area, if you step foot in there, you're not going to want to go anywhere else to get cut after that. If you're an out-of-towner and you're looking for a quick haircut, go to Keats Barbershop. It might make you want to move here just to be closer to the barbershop. I'm telling you. Okay, that might be going a little bit too far, but it's beautiful, old-school vibes. Keats Barbershop, 401 Burkitch Way, Suite 2 in Beaver, PA. For Tyler, for Smitty, this has been the Around the 412 Penguins show. Go check out the Steelers episode. Go check out the Pirates episode. If not, if you're just a Penguins fan, we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.